The morning mist clung to the ancient stones of Windsor Castle as Catherine, the Princess of Wales, stood before the tall windows of her private study. Her fingers traced the condensation on the glass while she watched the early groundskeepers tend to the perfectly manicured gardens below. The weight of the envelope in her other hand seemed heavier than any crown she might one day wear. The royal seal had been broken hours ago, yet she hadn't found the courage to share its contents with William. The diagnosis had arrived like a thief in the night, stealing away the certainty she had built her life upon. The words from her doctor still echoed in her mind, clinical and precise, yet somehow inadequate to describe the storm brewing within her heart. She had always been the strong one, the steady presence beside William as he navigated the complexities of royal duty. Now facing her own mortality, she wondered how to be vulnerable while remaining the pillar everyone depended upon. William's footsteps echoed down the marble hallway, his familiar gait bringing both comfort and anxiety. She quickly tucked the letter into her desk drawer, composing her expression into the serene mask she had perfected over years of public appearances. When he entered, his eyes immediately found hers, and she saw the concern that had been growing there for weeks. He had noticed her fatigue, the way she excused herself from evening engagements, the subtle changes that a husband of over a decade couldn't help but observe. Their morning routine had become a delicate dance around unspoken worries. William poured tea from the fine china set that had belonged to his grandmother, the Queen, while Catherine arranged papers on her desk with unnecessary precision. The silence stretched between them, filled with all the words neither dared to speak. Outside, the world continued its relentless pace, unaware that within these walls a future queen was grappling with news that would reshape everything they had planned. The irony wasn't lost on Catherine. She had married into a family where duty came before personal desires, where private struggles were often sacrificed for public service. Now, facing the most personal battle of her life, she found herself trapped between her need for William's support and her responsibility to protect him from worry. The royal family had weathered many storms, but this one felt different, more intimate, and potentially devastating. As William settled into his chair across from her, she studied his face, memorizing the lines around his eyes that deepened when he smiled, the way his hair caught the morning light. These details, once taken for granted, now seemed precious and finite. The conversation they needed to have loomed between them like an unbridgeable chasm, yet she knew that crossing it was inevitable. The children's laughter drifted up from the courtyard below, where George, Charlotte, and Louis were engaged in their morning lessons with their tutors. Catherine's heart clenched as she thought about how to explain to them that their mother's future had suddenly become uncertain. George, already showing signs of the serious nature that would one day make him king, would ask direct questions she wasn't prepared to answer. Charlotte, with her fierce independence and protective instincts, would try to fix what couldn't be repaired. And Louis, still young enough to believe his parents were invincible, would struggle to understand why his world was shifting. The weight of legacy pressed down upon Catherine's shoulders. She had spent years learning the intricate protocols of royal life, understanding that every action would be scrutinized and remembered. Now, she faced the possibility of leaving behind an unfinished story, duties unfulfilled, and a family that depended on her stability. The charities she patroned, the causes she championed, the careful diplomatic work she had undertaken, all of it hung in the balance. William's phone buzzed with the day's schedule, bringing them both back to the present moment. Cabinet meetings, charity visits, and public appearances awaited, each one requiring the performance of normalcy while their private world crumbled. Catherine realized that the hardest part wouldn't be facing her illness, but maintaining the facade of royal composure while everything inside her screamed for the luxury of falling apart. She thought of Diana, William's mother, who had faced her own struggles with grace and vulnerability that had endeared her to the world. Perhaps there was wisdom in Diana's approach in showing that even royals were human, susceptible to the same fears and fragilities as everyone else. The idea of sharing her burden publicly terrified Catherine, yet she recognized that it might be the only way to truly connect with the people she served. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the room and illuminating the portraits of past queens who had faced their own trials. Each face seemed to whisper encouragement, reminding Catherine that she wasn't the first royal woman to confront mortality, nor would she be the last. History was filled with queens who had ruled from sickbeds, who had found strength in weakness, and who had transformed personal struggles into public service. As the castle began to stir with the day's activities, Catherine made a silent promise to herself. Whatever came next, she would face it with the dignity expected of her position, but also with the honesty that her family deserved. The conversation with William could no longer be postponed, and the journey ahead, however uncertain, would be traveled together. The letter in her drawer was just the beginning of a story that would test everything she believed about courage, love, and the true meaning of royal duty. The weight of the crown she might never officially wear seemed lighter now, replaced by the heavier burden of truth. But truth, she realized, was the foundation upon which all meaningful relationships were built, and her marriage to William deserved nothing less than complete honesty, regardless of the consequences. The revelation came during their evening walk through Kensington Gardens, a ritual they had maintained since their early days of marriage. Catherine had chosen this familiar setting deliberately, hoping the comfort of routine might soften the blow of her words. The autumn leaves crunched beneath their feet as she finally found the courage to break the silence that had grown between them like a wall of unsaid truths. William stopped walking when she spoke the word that would change everything. His face went through a series of emotions: disbelief, anger, fear, and finally, a devastating sadness that made Catherine's heart break more than her own diagnosis had. The careful composure he maintained in public crumbled away, revealing the frightened husband beneath the future king. For several minutes they stood among the golden trees, holding each other while the world continued spinning around them. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of medical appointments, second opinions, and whispered consultations with the royal physicians. Each specialist brought their own assessment, their own timeline, their own version of hope or despair. Catherine found herself becoming fluent in a new language of percentages and prognoses, survival rates, and treatment options. The clinical nature of it all seemed surreal, as if they were discussing someone else's life rather than her own. William threw himself into research with the same intensity he brought to his royal duties. Their private apartments became filled with medical journals, laptop screens glowing late into the night as he sought answers from the world's leading experts. Catherine watched him channel his helplessness into action, understanding that this was his way of fighting a battle he couldn't win through conventional means. She loved him more in those moments of desperate determination than she ever had before. The children sensed the change in their parents before any official explanation was given. George's questions became more probing, his 8-year-old mind trying to piece together the fragments of overheard conversations and hushed phone calls. Charlotte, ever perceptive, began following Catherine more closely, as if her physical presence could provide the reassurance that words couldn't. Louis, barely 5, simply clung to his mother with an intensity that suggested he understood more than anyone realized. The decision of when and how to tell them became another burden to bear. Child psychologists were consulted, experts in royal protocol weighed in, and family advisors provided their recommendations. But ultimately, Catherine and William knew that this conversation belonged to them alone. They chose a quiet Sunday afternoon, gathering their children in the same sitting room where they had shared countless family moments, transforming it from a place of joy into a classroom for life's harshest lessons. George received the news with a gravity that seemed far too mature for his years. His first question wasn't about his mother's illness, but about what would happen to the monarchy, revealing the weight of future kingship already pressing on his young shoulders. Charlotte's response was more emotional, tears streaming down her face as she demanded to know why doctors couldn't simply fix whatever was wrong. Louis, overwhelmed by emotions he couldn't fully comprehend, simply crawled into Catherine's lap and refused to let go. The family's private secretary worked tirelessly to adjust their public schedules, carefully balancing the need for Catherine to focus on her health with the royal family's obligations to the British people. Official events were quietly postponed or reassigned. Charity patronages were temporarily suspended, and the usual royal calendar was stripped down to its most essential elements. Every decision required delicate diplomacy to avoid speculation, while protecting Catherine's privacy during the most vulnerable time of her life. Behind palace walls, a support system mobilized with military precision. Household staff who had served the royal family for decades approached their duties with renewed dedication, understanding that their discretion and care were more crucial now than ever. The royal chefs consulted with nutritionists to design meals that might help Catherine maintain her strength. Personal protection officers coordinated with medical teams to ensure secure transportation to treatments that the public would never know occurred. Catherine's relationship with her own family deepened during this period. Her parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, who had always maintained a respectful distance from royal life, found themselves drawn closer into the inner circle of support. Her siblings, Pippa and James, took on increased roles with the children, providing normalcy and love during a time when everything felt uncertain. The Middleton family's middle-class warmth became a refuge from the formal protocols that governed royal existence. The media presented their own challenge. Royal correspondents trained to read between the lines of official statements began speculating about Catherine's reduced public appearances. Palace communications teams worked around the clock to manage the narrative without outright deception, walking the impossible line between transparency and privacy. Catherine found herself mourning not just her health, but also the loss of control over her own story. As treatments began, Catherine discovered reserves of strength she hadn't known existed, the same determination that had helped her navigate the complexities of royal marriage now served her in hospital corridors and treatment rooms. She approached each appointment with the same grace she brought to state dinners, finding dignity in the most undignified circumstances. William marveled at her courage, even as he struggled with his own feelings of helplessness. Their marriage, tested by this ultimate challenge, revealed new depths of love and commitment. They learned to communicate without words, to find comfort in simple presence, and to appreciate moments of normalcy that had previously gone unnoticed. Evening conversations that once centered on royal duties and public obligations now focused on dreams for the future, memories of the past, and the precious reality of each day they had together. The weight of potentially saying goodbye to the life they had built together hung over every interaction, making ordinary moments extraordinarily precious. Catherine began to see her role not just as a future queen, but as a woman, wife and mother, whose legacy would be measured in love given and received rather than duties performed and protocols followed. The treatment center became Catherine's second home, its sterile corridors and clinical lighting a stark contrast to the opulent surroundings of royal residences. She insisted on driving herself to early appointments when possible, cherishing these moments of independence before the day's medical routines stripped away her sense of control. The other patients, unaware of her identity beneath scarves and sunglasses, treated her with the same weary camaraderie that bound all those fighting similar battles. In these waiting rooms, Catherine discovered a different kind of nobility. She sat beside grandmothers who spoke proudly of their families, young mothers juggling treatment schedules with school pickups, and career women who refused to let illness define their futures. Their stories put her own struggles into perspective, reminding her that courage wasn't exclusive to those born into privilege. The shared experience of facing mortality created bonds that transcended social class and public position. William's presence during treatments revealed the depth of his commitment in ways that years of marriage ceremonies and public appearances never could. He held her hand during the most difficult procedures, his own fear carefully hidden behind encouraging smiles and gentle humor. The man who would one day rule a nation learned to navigate hospital parking lots and decipher medical terminology, finding purpose in the smallest acts of care and support. The physical toll of treatment was something no royal protocol had prepared Catherine for. The elegant wardrobe that had been carefully curated for public appearances seemed irrelevant when faced with the practical needs of someone undergoing aggressive therapy. She learned to appreciate soft fabrics, comfortable shoes, and loose-fitting clothes that accommodated the changes in her body. The transformation was both humbling and liberating, stripping away vanity to reveal more essential truths about identity and worth. Their children adapted to the new reality with the resilience that often surprised adults. George took on increased responsibility for his younger siblings, his natural leadership qualities emerging earlier than anyone had anticipated. Charlotte channeled her energy into caring for others, organizing family activities and ensuring that Louis felt secure despite the uncertainty surrounding them. Louis, with the intuitive wisdom of childhood, seemed to understand that his hugs and laughter provided medicine that no doctor could prescribe. The royal household restructured itself around Catherine's treatment schedule, with staff members taking on additional duties without complaint. The head housekeeper coordinated with medical teams to ensure that recovery spaces at home were prepared according to clinical specifications. Private chefs worked with nutritionists to create meals that would appeal to Catherine's changing appetite, while providing the nutrition her body needed to heal. Every member of their extended royal family found ways to contribute to her care. King Charles, despite his own health concerns, became an unexpected source of strength and wisdom. His experience with public scrutiny during personal crises provided valuable guidance on managing both the emotional and practical aspects of their situation. He shared insights about finding meaning in suffering and the ways that personal struggles could deepen one's connection to the people they served. His support represented not just that of a father-in-law, but of a fellow royal who understood the unique pressures they faced. The decision to gradually share Catherine's diagnosis with select charities and organizations she patroned was made carefully. These institutions, many focused on health and family welfare, rallied around their patron with offers of support and understanding. The irony wasn't lost on Catherine that organizations she had supported in their missions to help others were now offering to help her. This reciprocal relationship revealed the true nature of charitable work as a mutual exchange of care and support. Privacy became both a luxury and a challenge. The couple's desire to shield their family from unnecessary scrutiny had to be balanced against the public's genuine concern for someone they had come to love. Palace communications teams worked tirelessly to provide updates that satisfied media interest while protecting the family's need for space and normalcy. Every statement was crafted to acknowledge public support while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Catherine's relationship with her faith evolved during this period of trial. The traditional Church of England services she had attended as part of royal duty took on new meaning when viewed through the lens of personal struggle. Ancient prayers that had seemed ceremonial now provided genuine comfort, and the community of believers offered support that transcended denominational differences. She found solace in the knowledge that countless people were praying for her recovery, regardless of their own religious backgrounds. The medical team treating Catherine became an extended part of their family support system. These professionals, accustomed to treating patients from all walks of life, navigated the unique challenges of caring for someone whose health was a matter of public interest. They provided not only medical expertise but also emotional support, helping both Catherine and William understand the treatment process and maintain realistic hope for positive outcomes. As weeks turned to months, Catherine began to document her experiences through personal writing. These private journals, never intended for publication, became a way to process the overwhelming emotions and experiences she was navigating. Writing provided an outlet for fears she couldn't share with William, hopes she was afraid to voice aloud, and reflections on life's meaning that emerged from facing its potential end. The act of putting words to paper became a form of therapy that complemented her medical treatment. The support from the British public, when news of her illness eventually became known, overwhelmed Catherine with its genuine warmth and concern. Letters poured in from across the Commonwealth, sharing stories of survival, offering prayers and expressing love for a woman who had earned their respect through years of dedicated service. Children sent drawings, elderly citizens shared wisdom from their own health battles, and families offered their support in touching displays of human connection that transcended the formal relationship between royals and subjects. Through it, all Catherine and William's marriage deepened in ways that prosperity and success had never achieved. They learned to find joy in small victories, to appreciate each day without taking tomorrow for granted, and to support each other through the most challenging circumstances either had ever faced. Their love story, which had begun with Fairy, Tale romance was being rewritten as a testament to the power of commitment, faith, and shared courage in the face of life's greatest challenges. The turning point came on a cold February morning when Catherine's latest test results arrived at their private residence. The numbers on the medical reports, which had become a foreign language they were forced to learn, told a story of gradual improvement that neither dared to fully embrace. Hope, they had discovered, was both a blessing and a burden, capable of lifting spirits while also setting the stage for devastating disappointment. This time, however, the cautious optimism in their doctor's voice suggested something different was happening. William had been away on a brief royal engagement when the call came, leaving Catherine to receive the news alone in the same study where she had first read her diagnosis months earlier. The symmetry wasn't lost on her as she sat in the same chair, looking out at gardens now brown with winter's grip, absorbing information that suggested her fight might not be in vain. When William returned that evening, he found her crying, not from despair, but from the overwhelming relief of possibility. The medical team remained appropriately cautious, explaining that recovery would be measured in months and years rather than weeks. Every positive indicator needed to be balanced against the reality that they were dealing with an illness known for its unpredictability. Catherine learned to celebrate small victories while maintaining emotional protection against potential setbacks. This delicate balance between hope and realism became another skill to master, like learning to speak multiple languages or navigate complex diplomatic situations. Their children, who had grown more serious and protective during the darkest months, began to show signs of their natural personalities returning. George's questions shifted from worried inquiries about his mother's condition to excited plans for summer holidays and family activities. Charlotte resumed her spirited debates about everything from homework to bedtime schedules, her argumentative nature a welcome sign of returning normalcy. Louis began sleeping through the night again, no longer waking from dreams that his parents might disappear. The gradual return to public duties required careful planning and significant adjustments. Catherine's first official appearance in months was deliberately chosen to be at a children's hospital, where her own experience with illness could provide genuine empathy and connection. The event, carefully managed by royal protection officers and medical advisors, lasted only 2 hours, but represented a monumental step toward reclaiming her public role. The patients and families she met that day had no idea how much their smiles and stories meant to someone still fighting her own battle. Palace staff, who had maintained professional composure throughout the crisis, quietly celebrated each milestone in Catherine's recovery. The head butler, who had served the royal family for over 20 years, admitted later that he had never prayed so hard for anyone outside his own family. The daily routines that had been disrupted by medical appointments slowly returned to normal, though everyone remained more aware of how precious ordinary moments could be. The media's response to Catherine's gradual return required delicate management. Royal correspondents, who had speculated for months about her condition, now had to navigate reporting on her recovery without invading the privacy that had been so carefully protected. Official photographs were released showing Catherine looking healthier, but still maintaining the dignity and reserve that the public expected. Behind the scenes, communications teams worked to balance transparency with the ongoing need for medical privacy. Catherine's relationship with her charitable work evolved significantly during her recovery. Organizations she had previously supported, with dutiful attendance, now received her attention with deeper understanding and personal investment. Her patronage of cancer research charities took on new meaning, as she could speak from experience about the importance of their work. Medical facilities that had seemed like distant causes now felt like personal missions, supported not just from obligation, but from genuine gratitude and connection. The financial implications of extended medical treatment, while not a burden for the royal family, gave Catherine new perspective on the challenges faced by ordinary families dealing with serious illness. She began advocating for improved access to treatment and support services, using her platform to highlight gaps in the system that she had observed firsthand. Her voice in these matters carried additional weight, coming from someone who had navigated the medical system as both patient and advocate. William's own transformation during this period was equally significant. The prince, who had sometimes seemed restless in his royal duties, now approached his responsibilities with renewed purpose and depth. His public speaking took on additional warmth and authenticity, informed by personal experience with vulnerability and fear. Colleagues noted that he listened more carefully, spoke more thoughtfully, and connected more genuinely with people facing their own struggles. The couple's marriage, tested by the ultimate challenge, emerged stronger and more authentic than ever before. They had learned to communicate about fears they had previously kept private, to support each other through weakness as well as strength, and to find meaning in suffering that had initially seemed senseless. Their relationship became a testament to the vows they had spoken years earlier, particularly the promise to remain together in sickness and in health. As spring returned to the royal gardens, Catherine found herself appreciating details she had previously overlooked. The emergence of daffodils from winter soil seemed to mirror her own journey from darkness toward light. She spent more time walking in the gardens, often alone, processing the magnitude of what she had endured and the gratitude she felt for each new day. These quiet moments became a form of meditation, helping her integrate the lessons learned during the most challenging period of her life. The support network that had sustained them through the crisis began to evolve as recovery progressed. Medical appointments became less frequent, allowing for more normal family routines. However, the relationships forged during the darkest times remained strong, creating a circle of trust and understanding that extended beyond traditional royal circles. Catherine's medical team remained close advisors, friends who had seen her at her most vulnerable, and continued to monitor her progress with personal as well as professional investment. Recovery brought its own challenges, including survivors, guilt, and the pressure to return to full royal duties before feeling completely ready. Catherine learned to pace herself, accepting that strength would return gradually and that pushing too hard could jeopardize her long-term health. This patience, forced upon her by circumstances, became another valuable life skill, applicable to all areas of her royal and personal responsibilities. The decision to share their story publicly came after months of careful consideration and countless discussions between Catherine, William, and their closest advisors. They recognized that their experience, while intensely personal, had the potential to help others facing similar battles. The announcement would need to be crafted carefully, balancing honesty with hope, vulnerability with strength, and personal revelation with respect for those who had supported them through their darkest hours. Catherine spent weeks writing and rewriting her statement, determined that every word should reflect her authentic experience while serving the greater good. She wanted to acknowledge the fear and uncertainty they had faced while also celebrating the love and support that had carried them through. Most importantly, she hoped to demonstrate that even those in positions of privilege and power were not immune to life's greatest challenges, but that such challenges could be faced with dignity, courage, and grace. The video message they chose to release was filmed in the same gardens where Catherine had taken so many solitary walks during her treatment. The setting was deliberately informal, showing the couple as parents and partners rather than as formal royal figures. William's hand resting on Catherine's shoulder throughout the recording spoke volumes about their mutual support, while her direct gaze into the camera conveyed the strength she had found through her ordeal. The public response exceeded their wildest expectations. Within hours of the announcement, messages of support poured in from around the world. Cancer survivors shared their own stories. Families dealing with similar diagnoses expressed gratitude for the couple's openness, and medical professionals praised their advocacy for better patient support systems. The royal family's website crashed from the volume of supportive messages, requiring additional servers to handle the unprecedented response. Catherine's first major public appearance following her announcement was at a gala for cancer research, an event that took on special significance given her recent experience. She chose to wear a dress in a vibrant blue, a deliberate departure from the black often associated with somber occasions. Her speech that evening, delivered without notes, spoke directly from her heart about the importance of hope, research, and support systems for patients and families facing similar challenges. The ripple effects of their openness extended far beyond public relations. Medical institutions reported increased donations and volunteer applications following Catherine's advocacy. Support groups for cancer patients experienced growth in membership as people felt encouraged by the royal couple's example to seek help and community. Research programs received additional funding as the public became more aware of the ongoing need for medical advances and improved treatments. Catherine's children, now old enough to understand more fully what their family had endured, became some of her strongest supporters and advocates. George, increasingly aware of his future role, spoke passionately about the importance of supporting medical research and patient care. Charlotte organized fundraising efforts at school, channeling her natural leadership abilities into charitable work. Louis, with his innocent enthusiasm, brought joy to hospital visits that became regular parts of their family's charitable activities. The experience had fundamentally changed Catherine's approach to her royal duties. Where once she might have approached charitable events with dutiful professionalism, she now brought authentic passion and personal understanding to her work. Her conversations with patients and families were informed by her own experience, creating connections that transcended the typical boundaries between royals and their subjects. Her advocacy became more focused and effective, driven by genuine understanding rather than mere obligation. William's role as a future king was also transformed by their shared experience. His public addresses took on new depth and authenticity, informed by personal encounters with vulnerability and fear. He spoke more openly about mental health, the importance of supporting families through crisis, and the responsibility of those in positions of privilege to use their platforms for meaningful change. His leadership style became more collaborative and empathetic, qualities that served him well in his various royal roles. The couple's marriage, having survived its greatest test, became a source of inspiration for others facing similar challenges. They received letters from couples around the world sharing their own stories of love sustained through illness, expressing gratitude for the example set by William and Catherine's public commitment to each other. Marriage counselors reported using their story as an example of how crisis could strengthen, rather than weaken, committed relationships. As Catherine's health continued to improve, she began traveling again, visiting medical centers and research facilities across the Commonwealth. These trips, carefully planned around her ongoing treatment schedule, allowed her to see firsthand the impact of the increased awareness and funding that had resulted from their public advocacy. She met researchers whose work had been accelerated by additional resources, patients who had been inspired by her example, and families who had found hope through her story. The annual cycle of royal duties took on new meaning as Catherine approached, each season with gratitude for the opportunity to participate. Events that had once felt routine now represented precious opportunities to serve, connect, and contribute to causes she cared deeply about. Her calendar, while still demanding, was managed more thoughtfully, with adequate time for rest and ongoing.
Medical monitoring built into every schedule. The couple's relationship with the media evolved significantly during this period. Having experienced intense scrutiny during their most vulnerable time, they developed clearer boundaries around privacy,
while also recognizing the power of their platform to effect positive change. Press interactions became more purposeful and strategic, focused on advancing causes they cared about, rather than simply fulfilling publicity obligations. Catherine's personal writing, which had begun as private therapy during treatment, evolved into a more formal advocacy tool. She began contributing articles to medical journals and charitable publications, sharing insights about the patient experience and the importance of holistic support systems. Her writing, while maintaining appropriate royal dignity, was refreshingly honest and accessible, helping to humanize the medical experience for both patients and healthcare providers. The long-term impact of their experience extended to policy, discussions within government and healthcare systems. Catherine's insights as both patient and public figure contributed to conversations about healthcare access, patient support services, and the integration of emotional and spiritual care into medical treatment. Her advocacy helped bridge the gap between medical expertise and patient experience, contributing to more comprehensive and compassionate care systems. As the one-year anniversary of her diagnosis approached, Catherine reflected on the journey that had transformed not just her health, but her entire perspective on life. service and purpose. The woman who had once worried about protocol and perfection had discovered strength in vulnerability, meaning in struggle, and purpose in sharing her story with others who needed hope and encouragement. 2 years after receiving the diagnosis that had turned their world upside down, Catherine stood once again in the same study where this journey had begun. The morning light streamed through windows that now held different meaning, illuminating, not uncertainty and fear, but gratitude and renewed purpose. The medical reports on her desk bore numbers that told a story of recovery, remission, and hope for the future. The woman who had once trembled while reading clinical terminology now understood every detail with the expertise of someone who had lived through the reality behind the statistics. The transformation in their family was evident in countless small moments. George, now 10, had developed a maturity and empathy that set him apart from his peers, qualities that would serve him well in his future role as king. His questions about his mother's health had evolved from fearful inquiries to informed discussions about medical research and patient advocacy. Charlotte, approaching her 8th birthday, had channeled her protective instincts into organizing charity events at school and advocating for better hospital facilities for children. Louis, now 7, had maintained his joyful spirit while developing an unusual sensitivity to others' struggles, often surprising adults with his insightful observations about suffering and healing. William's evolution as both husband and future monarch had been equally profound. The prince who had once struggled with the constraints of royal protocol now embraced his platform as an opportunity to effect meaningful change. His speeches about healthcare, family support, and the importance of vulnerability and leadership resonated with audiences worldwide. Colleagues noted that he listened more carefully, responded more thoughtfully, and led with an authenticity that had been forged in the crucible of personal crisis. The ripple effects of Catherine's public sharing continued to expand in ways they could never have anticipated. Medical research funding had increased substantially, driven partly by the awareness raised through their advocacy. Support programs for families dealing with serious illness had multiplied across the Commonwealth, many directly inspired by the gaps Catherine had identified during her own treatment. Her foundation, established during her recovery, had become a model for comprehensive patient and family support that addressed not just medical needs but emotional, practical, and spiritual concerns as well. Their annual Christmas card that year featured a family photo taken in the same gardens where Catherine had filmed her announcement video. The contrast with previous years' formal portraits was striking. This image captured genuine joy, hard-won peace, and a family that had been strengthened rather than broken by their shared trial. The setting sun behind them seemed to symbolize not an ending but a transition into a new phase of their lives together. Catherine's approach to royal duties had been permanently altered by her experience. Each engagement was infused with authentic purpose and personal investment that elevated routine appearances into meaningful connections. Her conversations with the public carried weight and depth that came from someone who had faced mortality and emerged with renewed appreciation for every interaction. Hospital visits, once dutiful obligations, became personal missions where she could offer hope, born from experience rather than mere sympathy. The couple's relationship with their broader family had also evolved. King Charles, who had provided quiet strength during their darkest hours, now collaborated with them on healthcare initiatives that reflected lessons learned from their shared experience. The royal family's approach to public service had been enriched by Catherine's insights about the power of vulnerability and authentic connection in building trust with the people they served. International recognition of Catherine's advocacy work came in forms that transcended traditional royal honors. Medical organizations worldwide acknowledged her contributions to patient care and family support. Research institutions credited her advocacy with advancing their work through increased funding and public awareness. Most meaningfully to Catherine, patients and families continued to share stories of how her openness about her own struggles had given them courage to face their own battles. The decision to write a book about their experience came after much deliberation. Catherine wanted to ensure that their story could continue to help others long after the initial media attention had faded. The memoir, co-written with William, would be brutally honest about the fear, uncertainty, and challenges they had faced, while also celebrating the love, support, and hope that had sustained them. All proceeds would benefit medical research and patient support programs, ensuring that their experience continued to generate positive outcomes for others. As they looked toward the future, Catherine and William recognized that their ordeal had prepared them for the responsibilities that lay ahead in ways that traditional royal training never could have accomplished. They had learned to lead through vulnerability, to find strength in admitting weakness, and to connect with people through shared humanity rather than elevated position. These lessons would serve them well as they assumed greater responsibilities within the monarchy. The children's understanding of their parents' experience had deepened their appreciation for both privilege and responsibility. They spoke knowledgeably about using their positions to help others, showing an instinctive grasp of service that went beyond protocol to encompass genuine care for others' well-being. Their childhood had been marked not by trauma, but by profound lessons about resilience, compassion, and the power of family love to overcome any challenge. Catherine's regular medical checkups had become routine rather than sources of anxiety. The medical team that had guided her through treatment remained close friends and advisors, their professional relationship having evolved into genuine personal connections. These appointments, once dreaded milestones marked on the calendar with trepidation, now served as celebrations of continued health and opportunities to discuss how her experience could contribute to better patient care for others. The legacy of their shared journey extended far beyond their immediate family. Young people facing similar diagnoses reached out through social media and official channels, seeking encouragement from someone who had walked the same difficult path. Catherine responded personally to as many as possible, understanding that a few words from someone who truly understood could provide hope during the darkest moments. These connections became some of her most treasured relationships, reminding her daily of the purpose that had emerged from her suffering. The anniversary of her diagnosis, rather than being observed with sadness or fear, had become an annual celebration of life, love, and the power of hope to overcome seemingly impossible circumstances. The family marked the date with private reflection and public service, using it as an opportunity to highlight ongoing needs in healthcare and patient support. What had begun as the worst day of their lives had been transformed into a symbol of resilience and renewal. Their marriage, tested by circumstances that had destroyed other relationships, emerged as a testament to the power of commitment, communication, and shared faith. They had learned to appreciate ordinary moments that they had previously taken for granted: quiet evenings together, family dinners without medical appointments to rush to, and the simple pleasure of making plans for the future without the shadow of uncertainty looming over every decision. As Catherine prepared for what would be her most significant public address since her recovery, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Speaking before an international medical conference, she would share insights gained not from textbooks or briefings, but from the lived experience of being both patient and advocate. Her words would carry the weight of someone who had faced mortality and emerged with deeper understanding of what truly mattered in life. The woman who stood at the podium that day bore little resemblance to the frightened patient who had once sat in hospital waiting rooms. While her experience had humbled her, it had also empowered her with authentic authority to speak about resilience, hope, and the transformative power of love and support. Her voice, steady and strong, carried to the back of the auditorium and beyond, reaching people around the world who needed to hear that survival was possible, that families could emerge stronger from crisis, and that even in the darkest moments, there were reasons to hope. The story that had begun with tears of despair had evolved into a narrative of triumph. Not triumph over illness alone, but triumph over fear, despair, and the tendency to take life's blessings for granted. Catherine and William's journey had demonstrated that even those born to privilege were not immune to life's greatest challenges, but that such challenges, when faced with courage and supported by love, could become sources of strength, wisdom, and purpose. As they returned home that evening, walking once again through the same gardens where so many crucial conversations had taken place, Catherine and William carried with them the satisfaction of having transformed personal struggle into public service. Their tears had indeed been composed into farewell, not farewell to life, but farewell to taking life for granted, farewell to shallow concerns, and farewell to the kind of service that came from obligation rather than genuine calling. The most stirring chapter of their lives together had been written not in palaces or at state functions, but in hospital rooms and treatment centers, in quiet moments of fear and doubt, and in the gradual return of hope and health. It was a chapter that would continue to inspire others long after they were gone, a testament to the truth that love, courage, and commitment could overcome any challenge life might present.